Welcome back to Heart Valve Pressure Mania, our third matchup of this cardiac cycle. Pits left ventricle man against aorta woman, the aorta being the one single vessel which leaves the left ventricle.
At the same time, we will be witnessing the matchup between right ventricle man and pulmonary trunk woman. The pulmonary trunk is the one vessel which leaves the right ventricle.
In our last matchup, left ventricle man was able to overcome the pressure of left atrium woman because the left ventricle had accumulated so much blood during the first half of the cardiac cycle that it was essentially full when the QRS complex began.
The same is true of right ventricle man, whose great pressure allowed him to close the tricuspid AV valve against the pressure of right atrium woman. Not only was this pressure due to the volume of blood, but also the fact that both ventricles began their systole early in the QRS complex, and the contraction of the cardiac muscle in the myocardium greatly increased the pressure as this muscle squeezed on a full chamber of blood.
Thanks to the systole of the cardiac muscle in the left ventricle wall, the pressure of left ventricle man exceeds that of aorta woman. And at this point, that pressure of the left ventricle is sufficient to force open the aortic semilunar valve and allow blood to be ejected into the aorta.
In the same way, the systole of the cardiac muscle in the wall of the right ventricle has given right ventricle man so much pressure that he can force open the pulmonary semilunar valve because the pressure exceeds the pressure in the pulmonary trunk.
Once again, it is pressure which determines whether a valve is open or closed. And in the late QRS complex, the pressure in the left ventricle exceeds the pressure of the aorta, and the pressure in the right ventricle exceeds the pressure in the pulmonary trunk. And this allows this ventricular pressure to force open the semilunar valves so that blood can be ejected.
And so, beginning in the late QRS complex, through the ST segment and into the early T wave, in this portion of the cardiac cycle, the pressure of the ventricles exceeds the pressure in the vessels leading from the ventricles, and this keeps the semilunar valves open for ventricular ejection.